if religion and belief in God has not been helpful, as you say, has deluded people, atheism doesn't exactly have a stellar record. I mean, societies that have tried to live without religion and God.
You're not going to bring out Hitler and Stalin again, are you?
I mean, you brought out fundamentalism for religion. Why is it not fair to try to use examples of societies that have tried to live without religion?
Are you seriously bringing up Hitler and Stalin?
How do you argue that the bloodiest century that we've just lived through, 20th century, was bloody, and it also happened to be the one that declared war against religion to a certain degree?
Look, this is so easy. Hitler and Stalin happened to, well, Stalin was an atheist, Hitler wasn't, but it doesn't matter that Hitler was Catholic and Stalin was an atheist. They were deeply evil men. They were motivated by quasi-religions of their own, in Hitler's case, invention, in Stalin's case, inheritance. These men were deeply evil. They were motivated by deeply evil quasi-religions, cultural religion substitutes. It was purely incidental. It's as incidental if they were atheists as Hitler wasn't.
Well, could we say the same thing about the 9/11 hijackers? It was incidental that they were religion?
No, it could not. It was not incidental, because it was religion that motivated them all the way. It was religion that gave them the courage to do it. It was religion. I mean, you know perfectly well what the last words of those hijackers were.
Right, but Stalin, you could say the same thing about Stalin and his war against
atheism. He was motivated by Marxism. He was motivated by a deluded vision of a paradisical future.
Richard Dawkins is confident that Darwin's theory of evolution explains everything, making God irrelevant. But how does he answer some of the more philosophical questions that can't be measured in a lab? Science tells us that when we love our children, in fact, what's happening is in your brain there is some serotonin uptake or some dopamine, some chemical fusion that happens that makes us feel love. However you may explain that, the love of your children goes beyond that chemical formula into something beyond science. It's a window into something ineffable.
I fully accept that science cannot actually explain love. I can't say love is the uptake of this, that, or the other chemical, love is this, that, or the other neurons. But it is entirely believable that although we cannot explain it, we cannot explain the details, nevertheless, there is nothing beyond that. But you've done nothing by calling it ineffable and transcendent. You're just using words. You're not getting anywhere by doing that. I'm not getting anywhere either, but I'm admitting it.
If we are simply evolved apes, right?
Which we are.
Okay. So, right?
Yeah.
And our behavior is determined by this natural selection. How do we explain those people who do good things for others, for total strangers, the charitable urge, the philanthropic urge? What Darwinian impulse would explain doing good for a total stranger?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I do devote a chapter or two to it. It's not that difficult for Darwinism to explain doing good not to total strangers, but to particular people, particular individuals, such as close relatives and other individuals whom you're likely to meet again and again throughout life, and therefore are in a position to reciprocate that good deed.
In other words, it helps your family, and there's some self-benefit.
That's right, and that's common throughout the animal kingdom and is well understood. The difficulty comes in explaining, as you say, why we're good to total strangers. I think probably the right Darwinian explanation is to say it's a sort of misfiring. A very crude misfiring would be the misfiring towards a cuckoo, being good to a cuckoo by its foster parent. The foster parent is totally unrelated to the cuckoo, but it doesn't know that, so to speak. Natural selection has built into the cuckoo foster parent, reed warbler, whatever it is, a mechanism which says, be nice to small squawking things in your nest. And that works. Don't shake your head, it's entirely plausible. That is what happens.
But when you say a misfiring,
yes.
So I am nice to a homeless person on the street, and you're suggesting that it's a misfiring of my Darwinian impulse.
Yes, but that's not to demean it in any way, because what I'm trying to explain is that there definitely is a desire to be good, a desire to be nice, a feeling of empathy, a feeling of sympathy. When I see an unfortunate person, somebody who is destitute, I want to help them. I really do. I mean, it's a strong desire. It's as strong as a sexual lust, and I think the sexual lust is actually not a bad analogy, Now, in our history, the lust to be good once worked in Darwinian terms, because everybody you met in those days would be likely to be either a close relative or somebody that you were going to meet again, who would therefore be able to reciprocate it. That's why the lust to be good was built in. Now, we live in big cities, the people we meet are total strangers. It's as though we're on the pill. It's as though we are no longer
horny to do good?
Sorry?
We're just instinctively horny to do good works?
If you're demeaning it by using that phrase.
Well,
I'm trying to explain to you by using an analogy of sex.
But are you demeaning the charitable impulse, which some would say lies at the heart of religion and the morality? Are you demeaning that kind of morality by saying it's a misfiring of a Darwinian impulse, as opposed to actually explain it?
I'm trying to enlighten by explaining, and I'm using sex as an analogy. And you have got to admit that we feel sexual lust, even though we're using contraception, and therefore, from a Darwinian point of view, the sexual lust is not working anymore. We still feel the lust. Now, I'm saying that the parallel to that is that in our Darwinian history, we felt a lust to be good in just the same way as we felt a lust to be sexy.
Could one argue that, to use that analogy, if you're beholden to the Darwinian theory, it shows not a consistency of the Darwinian theory, but a failure, a paucity of the Darwinian theory and its inability to explain good charitable works?
Not an inability to explain, but an inability to discriminate between situations in which the Darwinian impulse is, in a Darwinian sense, appropriate, and when it isn't appropriate.
Would that suggest that in the future we will evolve away from the Darwinian impulse to do good?
Possibly, but the force of that question is exactly the same as the force of, does it suggest that we will completely lose our sexual lust if in the future we go through generations of using contraception? I don't think actually that either of those will happen.
It's a great pleasure to speak with you always.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Okay.